Hey gang, welcome to the Ilities. I'm Tim Marsh, founder and head of strategy at MDB. And today my guest is Anthony Syams. Anthony has a digital platform, a software as a service platform that provides modular visibility and traceability and a bit of product data transparency depending on your needs. And the way it's offered to industry is through small enterprises, small businesses, and small boutique consulting firms like mine. So we're going to have Anthony take us through how the platform works, where it came from, the background of its origins, and talk a little bit about how it's applicable for digital product passports and today's emerging needs for product traceability and transparency. So let's get right into it and have fun. Well, Anthony, welcome to the webcast. Thanks for joining today. And why don't we start with you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what your role is and what your company does.
All right, fantastic. Hi, Tim. Thank you very much for having me here today. So I am the CEO and founder of COTIT. Founded this company around 7 years ago with an urge to make supply chain more visible. But going a little bit back in my career, I have an extensive experience within the internet industry. I worked there for over 17 years in different roles for top-tier international internet companies, data centers, internet service providers, hosting providers, and such. And what I actually realized there is most of the components that you would find in the industry were inspired by the supply chain. But what I could learn from that industry is that a lot was much more efficient because a lot of the components were transparent, visible, a lot of trial and errors, and therefore enough space to improve. And also, what you could also see, and we can all see it actually, is that the internet industry is evolving very fast, and you see it already in the innovation that is building on top of what the internet industry has shown us.
I want you to jump into the demo of the platform for us, and for our listeners, I consider it a traceability / visibility type of platform. With a rather interesting or innovative business model with Anthony will take us through later here.
Before I do, I'll give some explanation to the viewer of what they will see in the next demo.
Sure.
So as we discussed before, Tim, we've created this modular supply chain visibility platform because when we were active working in the supply chain and finding these different issues that were there, we realized there were actually in general two situations. One of the situations was that there were companies using a lot of systems to become more efficient, only to find out they become inefficient because they use a lot of systems. These systems don't communicate with each other, and therefore data is scattered throughout the operation. Makes it very complex to get visibility from all of those systems.
Yeah.
On the other side, we also realized that even large companies would still work in Excel, and study shows that 67% of all supply chain managers still work in Excel. And the reasons actually are pretty obvious. Most of the applications, solutions out there can be pretty expensive for the smaller supply chain companies, and also pretty inaccessible. So we figured out that should be solved. So we created this, what we call a modular supply chain visibility platform. And it can do actually two things. On one side, it can integrate and aggregate with any system. So you can collect the data from the different sources in this unified environment, which we call the modular environment. Second of all, because the APIs, the back-end modules, so the systems that we've created that can integrate, also holds a lot of functionalities. So if you build an interface on top of it, and we offer template interfaces for that, you can actually make tools accessible, tools and solutions accessible to those that don't have any tools in place. So basically puzzling the things together to have the perfect situation, so you have an entire view of the supply chain operation. We created around 40 plus software components. We call them modules. And we've grouped them in three purposes, because besides having operational visibility, which you also can call operational excellence, we also should think about what the future is asking from us. Things such as digital product passport, circular economy. So these become more important. So we have grouped them in these three purposes. So first of all, operational excellence. Secondly, the provenance and traceability, and thirdly, digital identity and engagement.
Yeah, and I can, as you do that, I can attest to the research with that alarming figure of companies managing their businesses in Excel. I know, in particular, I know you're probably going to show the an apparel use case here. From my research and work in apparel last year in 2023, I was actually quite surprised the extent to which billion-dollar apparel brands are managing some parts of their supply chain with Excel spreadsheets and even their entire sustainability programs in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, very good point, Tim. And I think as well, like, companies also have to deal with a lot of legacy systems, because then it becomes very hard to adapt new technologies. So I feel that there should be a way, and I think we have that solution to make systems more flexible and adaptable to what time brings us, right?
Right.
So, all right. I think you see my screen right now.
Yep. We see the lady in the dress. Yep.
Perfect. So this is what we call a potential digital product passport. So this is the purpose where I mentioned the provenance and traceability of a specific a product. It doesn't really matter if it's a product, a material, or component, or whatever you want to make traceable, right? In this specific demo, we show this fashion item because, as you mentioned, a lot of the fashion companies struggle with these issues. Okay, so there are multiple ways to identify this dress through an NFC. And actually, I have this dress back at home, and you could scan the actual button, and then it would take you to this page. But also the more popular identification methods, such as barcode or QR code scanning. And I know a lot of apparel brands nowadays have a QR in the label, and you can scan it, and it brings you to the page where it says we use sustainable materials. We have a lot of these, but it's not based on real-time data. Obviously, it's based on the work that they're doing, right? In this case, in this specific demo, you can see that the entire provenance can be tracked and traced. And obviously, beside that, you can also put a lot of marketing stories. You can put the certificates that were involved to that project. Create a little map where you can see the points where the product went through. But even more importantly, you would see the provenance of this product. So in this demo, you would see it went from farming through production and then finally into the retail, and every step in between. For example, in the production, it went from sewing to stitching to printing, testing, and packing. So every piece, every step in the supply chain can be tracked and can be measured.
Right.
So obviously, when you talk about supply chain, between different aspects, different steps in the supply chain, you will always have to deal with different companies working together. For example, in this use case, the farming and the production, these are different companies, and there in between there's a transaction. So we can even keep track of that transaction. So obviously we have masked the data that's behind it, but this also shows that we can connect it, for example, to a blockchain network, because a lot of companies now exploring with blockchain. But I feel and I think as well that a lot of the blockchain networks out there are not ready to process the amount of data that is processed within the supply chain. Because if we talk about millions of product, meaning billions of transactions, billions of data transaction, it becomes pretty expensive in terms of transaction cost. But at the same time, a lot of these blockchain networks are not built to process millions of data transactions per minute, even.
Yeah,
So this could be
very expensive. It's not the best use of digital ledgers. Yeah, agreed.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. And so therefore, you would always rely on like applications, traditional applications that we already know. So in this case, you can make a data set, and that data set can be referred in the blockchain. So you will always could refer from the blockchain to the data set that is sitting in the application, and make it in a way immutable. So when somebody is changing that data, you can always track and trace that someone was changed at that specific time by that specific person, etc.
Right.
All right. So going further down the provenance of this product, at some point it will be bought by a person. But in our case, it really doesn't matter if the product is being bought by a individual, by a company, or even it could be a machine that wants to attach specific materials or product to this other component. So this is what we call the digital identity and engagement, and I will show you in a bit. But before I do this, one important thing I need to mention as well. So every product, every item can be made unique because it's embedded with a unique code. So we can track and trace until the individual item. In some cases, companies are not there yet. They have to identify batches, but when they become ready to identify on the unique item level, then we can make sure that is within the solution. All right. So
Excellent.
as I said, I can connect this product to another profile. In this case, I will connect it to myself. So now I can become the owner of this product. So for this illustration, we made a simple interface. This simple interface is just for demo purposes, but I need the viewer to use its imagination here. Because what can be shown here is things such as graphs, statistics of my consumption behavior, digital inventory of what I've bought over the year or over the last 10 years. But also something very, very exciting, because if we're talking about circular economy, then we also talk about waste assets, because then waste will have a value. And the thing is, 99% nowadays of all textile is not being recycled. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So in this case, if we can become incentivized by bringing our old textile to a specific place, then it motivates me as a consumer to bring it because I hold assets here. So I can convert it into a discount or in tokens or in actual money. It really doesn't matter in this case, right? All right. So
Right. And I
all
guess
of
to interrupt you there a second. I guess if you have the ability in this platform to either, if you're going to exchange the asset, the dress in this case, um, after your ownership, I guess you have the ability to mask your identity
yes,
for you may show that it was bought and owned by a person, but you don't have to necessarily give up your details to
correct,
the next owner,
correct,
per se. And the next owner might be looking at the history of this and the provenance of the product to make sure, okay, this is actually a real designer dress by such and such a brand, and I can authenticate it with the scan of that little button, one of the buttons, right? So they know whether they're upcycling it or they're just buying it from a used one of the online marketplaces that sell used clothing, like Poshmark or the Real. There's ability there for you to pass along that provenance, and it adds some legitimacy to it rather than it just showing up on a platform stating or claiming it is a certain thing when there's no history of it.
exactly. And obviously, yeah, we're sitting in Europe. We have to deal with a lot of compliances around GDPR and stuff. So everything that we've built is like privacy by design. So that means, indeed you can mask it, but in some cases you don't want to mask it. For example, if Ed Sheeran bought a specific item and he's now going to resell that item, he can sell it for a higher value, for example, and you want to know that Ed Sheeran was the real owner of that specific
Right.
item.
Yeah.
So in some cases you would indeed want to mask it, in some cases you wouldn't. So it really depends on the use case.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
All right. So all of these applications should be managed through what we call the operational excellence. Because to be honest, this part, and that's why we didn't invest a lot of interfacing work on this, is because the digital identity and engagement is something that is really more future focused. What we have seen is a lot of companies like this idea. They want to work towards this idea, but they're just not ready for this idea. So a lot of them are ready for example, digital product passport, but that's because of compliances. In Europe, there's something like new regulations around the Green Deal, So
Yep.
by 2030, yeah, we have to deal with digital product passport, digital like material passport, battery passport, and such. So by legislation, you have to have these things. So these become more relevant. But
Yeah, and yeah, the viewers of the channel are pretty usually pretty typically or up to speed on circular economy and the DPP. I think what the unstated thing is, what I guess I would agree with you that customers or brands may not be ready for this level of consumer engagement at an instance level, an item, an individual unique item level.
correct.
Um, for whether it could be technology as an issue, but it also could be, well, putting together that history of how the product was made is not trivial, right? Even though you make it easy for in your modular approach with what you're going to show next, you make it easy for that information to get captured in the system. There's still a lot of groundwork that has to be put in place ahead of time. I think, as most people that are active in traceability will recognize, it's not an understatement to say that it can be a challenge to get some of those trading partners upstream to share certain bits of information with you as the brand, and then agree to allow to make that visible, because sometimes they uh, they fear their fear of competition
Yeah.
prevents them from the wanting to share data to help the brand owner.
Correct, correct. And I think we're moving into a time where we become more aware that data can be leveraged and should be leveraged. We see it in other industries as well, and that leverage can be used to collect more data from suppliers, partners, customers, and so whatsoever. Because in the end, we're all part of the supply chain, right? So when data is made visible and it reveals the actual impact, what is bringing, then the motivation to share the data or become compliant, or we even have a new regulation around extended producer responsibility. So that means the producer needs to be able to show their data,
Yeah.
right? So operational excellence is something that becomes more and more important. And as I said in the beginning, and it's a shame that a lot of companies are not even started their digital transformation yet.
Yeah.
So in this next environment is something that we call the operational excellence environment. So this is actually where we connected multiple modules together. We utilized our own modules in this demo, obviously, but for us, it shouldn't matter if there's an ERP or a CRM, which is from a different source, and we need to collect that data and make visible into this modular interface. In some cases, companies have invested immensely in their own software, so they have their own environment and whatsoever. Because this is modularly built, we can also enhance what they have. So for example, they have a certain software package, but they're missing, for example, order management. We
Right.
can use the order management module and then plug it into their system and interface it in what they have. So it's really a flexible approach here.
Yeah.
And it should be flexible, because I always say there is no one size fits all in the supply chain. Although we treat it like that when we start using software and solution, I think it should be more flexible in that sense.
Yeah.
All right. So to give you an example, so obviously you have to deal with products. I just showed you the product of a fashion item. And obviously this product has dimension, has information, and that's all of that sort. So that information can be shown in this interface is the product management. You can attach photos to it, a link other materials to it, from which warehouse stock. You can see the turnover rate. So actually you can see a lot of information here. But the important thing here is all of this information can be dynamically configured. Because as I said, there's no one size fits all. So that means in some cases you need different data fields, need different workflows, need different processes to do the actual to use the actual solution. So we have built the solution on a no code idea. So that means no code principle, I should say. So this no code principle is that everyone with supply chain experience should be able to configure and to set the environment up for their clients. And I will actually give you an example of that. But before I do, let me check if am I missing something? Yeah, something that I want to show as well. So, for example, I'm a supply chain expert and I want to create this environment for my customers. I can create, for example, the custom fields, which belongs to the specific sections, and that specific section will then show the data fields that I've been configuring for that section, right? So you can create this data field and then show where it needs to belong, etc. But also, I can also create, for example, workflows, because every process might be slightly different. So, but maybe also I want to automate certain processes. This is able through the workflow settings. So through the workflow settings, you can, for example, create triggers. For example, order comes in, trigger goes out to the order management that the order should be picked, and then they get an email, order should be picked, or an app notification that the order should be picked at that location. They go there, they pick up the order, and then bring it to a specific place. But
Right.
if you think about more future-based, obviously these triggers can also be connected to machines, because now machines will be picking the order, or machines would do the actual will do the actual action behind it. So in that sense, we can also integrate, for example, with Internet of Things devices, but also robotic machines and whatsoever. So we really try to be open for everything that's coming and is already there. And as you said in the beginning, there's so much technology out there, but we not always utilize this technology because of limitations. So going back actually to the use case that I wanted to show you, I mentioned limitations, and this is a use case that initially has a lot of limitations, because this is about coffee. It's a coffee brand that source their coffee from farmers in Africa. All right.
Right.
So everything that I will show you here, it's not been built by us. At least the tools are built by us, but everything that you will see in the interface, it's been created by the supply chain expert. Just to show you that anyone that is a supply chain expert consultant can create their environments for their end clients. So
Right.
in this case, the supply chain consultant that we are working with needed to create an environment to show that the coffee was indeed traded under fair circumstances. So if you would scan the coffee, you will go to this page. You could see the batch ID, the production date, that it's sourced in Kenya, and obviously everything that we've created is also mobile available. So then it becomes mobile responsive.
Responsive. Yep. Exactly.
So going further down the provenance, you can see the actual a map where it's being farmed. This is one of the members of the farmer group. You could actually see the invoice that was being paid to that farmer, the production information. So how was the product being produced? Here's a little process. We washed the berries first and then dried it. And then even in this roasting profile, it says we roasted the coffee at 9.4 minutes. The first crack was at 8.1 minute, and we started the temperature at 201.2 degrees Celsius, obviously.
Yep.
All right. So this is all dynamic data. So that means if you would scan another package, you would see different data. That's because actually what we did for this specific use case is we created a importing tool where the coffee farmer could import the data. Because as you can imagine, coffee farmers in Africa don't use an ERP system,
Right.
unfortunately, yet.
Yep.
So they needed to start somewhere. So obviously there's a lot of limitations for some companies. They say, yeah, I want to use a provenance tool, but yeah, I don't really have data sitting in application. It really shouldn't matter, because most of the companies have access to Excel, and most of them are still working Excel anyway. So you can import this Excel list and then connect the data points with the right steps in the supply chain. Add photos to it, add text to it. You can even add graphs to it or whatever you want to add to it, and then put some styling onto it. And this is actually what you get, right?
Yep.
So for this specific use case, obviously they want to become more efficient in the supply chain as well. So there's a situation that they want to have the farmers start using ERP solutions. But then there's another challenge, because in Africa, farmers don't have a laptop or a desktop or whatsoever.
Right.
But luckily, nowadays, almost everyone in this world has a smartphone. In the third world countries, I've even seen most of them have 2 to 3 smartphones. So what they can do is download the app, and as I said, everything that we've built is also made available for mobile. So they can just scan the coffee, they can scan the amount of the batch, they can put some weight onto it, they can even make pictures and videos of themselves farming the coffee. So that makes it that this environment becomes more immersive. And then as a consumer, I also have the potential to interact with a farmer, for example, because now it becomes really measurable where the farmer is and what they're using. Because in the app, obviously, you can also put geolocation if you want that. You can add a ticketing module inside, so chat function, so you can actually chat with the farmer. So there are a lot of potentials here. That's what
Yeah,
we're trying.
I would. It's kind of either funny or ironic. I'm not sure what the right word would be, but I've worked with companies here in North America, in the United States, that use notebooks for managing their processes, their records of the batches that they produce. And these are industrial companies making raw materials and ingredients that go into other products. That back end application, mobile application, to capture that data in real time. Number one, for the farmer, of course, the coffee farmer, makes it super easy,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
them. And then even where we would assume there's a higher degree of technical capabilities here, like where I live, this could still be valuable
yeah,
in
yeah.
application. Yeah.
And actually, that's funny that you're saying that, because when we did the intermediation work, we had a specific situation in manufacturing fashion items. And I was super surprised that all of the communication was through WhatsApp. It was stored in their WhatsApp. So that means all the documents and everything was all from WhatsApp. And I always said, like, there's no chance that this can go right in the first time. There's no chance. And actually, I was totally right, because they made a lot of mistakes, so they had to do the production over. So wasted a lot of materials.
Yeah.
And this could all be avoided if you just have a centralized system, understanding what needs to be done, have a checklist. Okay, we have to go to these steps. Okay, this is done, this is done, this is done, and then go to the next step. You could avoid so much waste. And the funny thing is, and not all people understand this, obviously the consumer is paying also for the waste that has been done.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So instead of thinking that things should be more expensive when we become more sustainable, it can also be actually quite cheaper if you do it in the
Yep.
right way.
Yep. Yep. That's the operational excellence mindset there. Yep.
Exactly. So yeah, this is actually this is what is possible, and there are a lot of more implications. For example, we can do it in every industry. You have a supply chain, so it can be done in any specific use case. We try to be very neutral in this, because we see that this can be applicable to so many situations. So for us, we look at things from a data perspective, from a functionality perspective.
Right.
So for us, it isn't really important what type of industry or what type of expertise is behind it. So what we are focusing on mostly is, we only want to work with supply chain consultants, experts, and boutiques, because what we've realized when we offered this solution with the end client, because we did some years ago, is that we realized that when we started to integrate solutions, starting to implement all of the solutions and whatsoever, we started to realize that we needed to do a lot of consultancy work, a lot of groundwork, a lot of process management, change management was involved to it. And we realized that, but wait, we're system builders, so we would need to focus on what we're good at. And there's so many other much more better consultants and experts in this field that understand way much more about processes and how they should change their operation and whatsoever. So instead of trying to figure out how it should work, we are more we take more the position of, okay, we just want to be the technology partner for these experts, because we have this motto in our company, is saying that unifying expertise with data to create resilient supply chains, because basically that's the way you should create a resilient supply chain. It always involves the human touch, the human expertise. And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, AI can do everything and anything and whatsoever. But we feel that AI can do a lot, but there's always that thing that AI can do, and that's that the experience that comes along with it.
Yeah, I think your realization there is something that I know I've lived throughout my career in consulting and working in pharma, healthcare in particular, and now more so in food traceability. There are some wonderful platforms out there, big, sophisticated, capabilities that are there, but they all require some level of change management. And I agree with you. I think it's better if a software application company focuses on what they do best, and that is to develop software. Leave the integration to the consultants who understand how to manage change and get all the moving parts at an organization or a small or large company working in the right direction to be able to leverage the software application and reap the benefits of it and get the value out of it. A lot of times we see the software companies, they go in and they sell the software, and then the integration is 100% up to the client, and the client's not, they're just not ready for that. They're not knowledgeable enough to do such a type of change management program, or the experiences they've had in the past were with something like maybe like an SAP integration, which is a nightmare, and always costs more and takes much longer than they always estimate. And it's just you can bet on it. And your approach, I think, makes a lot of sense, especially for small consultancies like mine.
Yeah,
where we can see there's value to something, but I'm not going to spin up our resources building a software platform. That's not what we do best either.
No, exactly. And on top of that, I also believe that, because a lot of these consultants would go work in a project, in a project form. But what I'm feeling is you go into a project, you solve a lot of issues, and therefore they can grow to the next stage, for example. But the value that you have brought as an expert is way more valuable than the actual transaction that has been done on that specific moment, because obviously you will exchange your hours for a certain rate, and that rate will give you the value back. So we rethought the process around it as well, because we feel if the implementation is being done by the expert and the process management and all of that is being done by the expert, then we feel that a good share of what has been established should also go to the expert.
Yeah.
So we have this revenue sharing model where we say, okay, through the entire lifetime of the actual end users using the solution, the revenue will be shared, because that's a way more scalable way of doing business for the consultant, for the expert, and also for ourselves, because we rely on that expertise.
Yeah.
So we are dependent on what is being configured, what is being put out there. And although we are a software solution, I would more say a platform. But some would say, yeah, but you have your software, so you're also like a SaaS provider. But I don't take a position like a SaaS provider, because we more look at things from a neutral perspective. Because for us, it isn't really important which software you use. You can use any software, but if you don't have any software in place, yeah, you can start using our modules. It really doesn't matter. And also on top of that, the modular layer creates also some flexibility, because, for example, obviously we created some base layer about what the modules can do. In some cases, these modules need extra functionalities. We won't probably not invest in these extra functionalities. So therefore, another software would be more fitting to your operation. So therefore, you can plug that software into the modular layer. But it gives you also flexibility. For example, now you figure out that software is way too expensive, and it doesn't really align with your vision or where you're trying to head towards. In that sense, you can replace that component. And nowadays, if you look at software being used, you get really built into it and you cannot get out of it.
Can't get out of it. You're locked in. Yeah.
You're locked in, yeah.
That's what the software company wants. They want to
That's
lock
what
you
the
in.
software company wants, but it's not good for innovation, because now suddenly AI comes into place. Okay, now we want to utilize AI. We want to have automatic advice calculations and whatsoever. But wait, the software that I've bought doesn't support that.
Yeah.
It makes it very complex.
Yeah, and I think there's a value to an end client to that approach of the revenue share that's maybe unstated, and that is, for me, if I was an independent bringing this solution into one of my clients, with you with COTIT um, as the platform, I'm incentivized as well to help that be an avenue of growth, or an enabler of growth, I should say, over the long term for the client. So that's going to keep me engaged with them, whether they're paying me or not. I'm going to want them to be successful with that and help them, and maybe even bring things back to your
Right.
platform and say, hey, could you develop a module that does this?
Yeah.
To your point, this thing that we thought we wanted and we like looks like it might do the job, but oh my gosh, it's way too expensive. We can't see the value in buying it. What would it take for us to do it in the platform?
Yeah.
And that's the relationship that you can broker. That an independent consultant or a consultancy can actually broker with you as the platform provider.
Exactly. And what
Yeah.
we see as well, because we allow, obviously, to implement, configure all by yourself, so that creates additional revenue streams. And also because you have access to visibility, you have access to what the movements are within that operation. You can also advise and change on the spot when it needs to be changed, right? Based on real-time data, instead of figuring out in a year that something's going wrong and then go back in the project. I think you can be more more proactive in that sense.
Proactive and a little bit more agile than
Yeah.
maybe in a traditional sense. Yeah, with a stationary or less dynamic platform.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Anthony, that's been wonderful talking to you and having you give us an overview of what COTIT is all about, what you enable. So for our viewers here today and listeners, all the information you need to get in touch with Anthony will be in the show notes below. So have a look at those. Don't hesitate to connect with Anthony and myself on LinkedIn. And if you wanted to learn more about the platform and its possibilities, you can get directly in touch with Anthony at COTIT. So thank you again, Anthony. Pleasure again seeing you here today, and looking forward to working with you here in the future.
Likewise. Thank you for catering this, facilitating this platform, and obviously also the viewers. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Until next time. Yep.
All right.